Good morning. Welcome back to the class for today. Right. So I think we've covered 10 topics already as per that syllabus, which we had talked about in terms of ServiceNow fundamentals, which is required for CSA. So the last topic we covered was knowledge management. And today we are going to cover the service catalog. Now, service catalog is a very interesting topic, and this is something you do quite a lot as an administrator or as a developer, I would say. So sometimes it requires development skills, but even if you do not have development skills, you can still create catalogs with a lot of UI actions there. So we'll just cover that part. First, we like to understand why do we create catalogs? And what is the actual need for creating catalogs, right? So for example, the whole reason for giving any service catalog is to offer products and services to their end users. For example, if you go to Amazon, so all those things which you actually order, they are actually catalogs, if you ask me, in terms of technology. And for example, if you're just ordering EcoDot, Amazon EcoDot, right? So you will select a particular item, you will select the quantity, you might want to add one or two new things to it, to the existing order, and then you submit the order, and then you get the overall tracking that, okay, when will it be delivered? So to give an interface to the end user in terms of their own products and services, we have to create catalogs and systems. And for example, if you go to restaurant, right, and then you ask them what is available to do in a normal restaurant, you can go to a decent restaurant, you generally get a menu card. That is actually the catalog. In that case, you kind of order from your mouth, you could just order verbally. In this case, you order via system, right? Now, because service catalog is accessible, it should be accessible to all the end users who want to request for any product and services. So it should be accessible on all the interfaces, right? So if you remember, we talked about service. There were three user interfaces we talked about initially. One was the service portal, right? Second was the mobile apps. Third was the virtual agent. And and this is the one which we are already looking at right now, which is user interface. So you can, so for this interface, if you remember, we talked about it, that this interface is visible only to those people who have full ITIL rules, which means they can work on incidents, they can work on problems, requests and changes. I mean, the IT support teams or any support team for that matter, whoever is supporting their users in ServiceNow, they have access to this kind of code, this kind of interface, because it is a rich UI interface and it requires heavy licensing. However, when you opt for service portal, normal service portal, at that time things become quite easier for you, because as I said earlier, also does not require any additional licenses to get access to the portal. And this is the end user, that will be the end user portal. For example, if I were to go here and if I select portal, right, I think we have seen it earlier also. I'll show you once more. So I'm just opening it up here. So this is where people generally come and they request for products and services using the catalogs. And if you remember, this is the same portal where they used actually the knowledge management part also. They were using knowledge articles from here itself, right? Request something. This is where they actually go with this catalogs. Now, all these catalogs you see here. So this is the end user view from where they see the catalogs. And they can request for things, whatever they're looking for. For example, you can see there is a popular item here, and there are categories for hardware, desktops, mobiles, printers. You can search these things also here, right? So I can search anything here for that matter on this particular search bar. Yeah. So these are the ones which are out of the box built in. So when I say product means, you are asking for a mobile, you're asking for a laptop or desktop or a keyboard, something of that sort. When I say services, which means you need some kind of access, you need some kind of email account, all these kind of things, right? So the basic changes which are not actually hardware devices, not actually assets, for them, if you are asking something, for example, installing the software, but this is a service which you are asking them to do for you, right? This is where they actually, and these are categorized properly. So what you see here, these are all categories and subcategories. These are categories, these are subcategories under which you have this catalog. This individual unit, what you see here, is called as a catalog item. And this is what you actually create on the backend system, which is visible to the end users in the front end. And that, so you just understand, think from this perspective, for an end user perspective, if I were to create a new email account, then what will I need to give them as an input so that they can do that request, right? So for example, in this is a very simple one there where they give you, for example, they first give you the title of the whole catalog, the short description around it, and then what it is all about, description of that particular catalog, right? And then you can also use images as per your requirement. Now here, this is where they have defined a variable in the backend, which is used to fetch data from end users. Now, for example, if you were to give them any product or service, you need to ask them certain questions sometimes, right? For example, if I were to order a laptop, then you'll ask them, what kind of model you're looking for? What is the RAM? What is the CPU? I mean, all those kind of things. So because you're giving them a customized, a personalized behavior, so you can build those questions. So it is completely up to us that how many questions do we want to build. But then the whole idea of a service catalog is to make it as simple as possible, because the moment you start putting a lot of questions, people will not be motivated or encouraged enough to actually request via the code, because they'll understand, oh, okay, if I have to go there, I'll have to put in a lot of information. So the whole concept of service catalog is more about take minimum input and give maximum output. That's the whole objective. So just only ask those questions which are absolutely mandatory for you. That is first thing. Yeah, you can ask some optional questions also, but then leave them optional. Don't. For example, this one you can see is a mandatory field here, right? This is a mandatory field because without submitting this particular thing, they cannot actually request this catalog, right? It also shows the delivery time 2 days. So all of those things which are available on a general e-commerce website like Amazon, Flipkart, or whatever, you see all of these here, right? For example, if I just say alok.gupta@servicenow.com, just trying to, and I'm clicking, maybe I need 2 quantities, so I can order 2 quantities as well. But then in this case, you don't generally order 2 quantities, so you can add to cart also. You can order now. So add to cart means you want to add more items to the cart. Same way you do it for any e-commerce website, you do it here as well. And then you click on order now, and then the request is submitted. And here they're asking for some request for whom. So maybe because I have logged in the system admin ID on my personal development instance, that is why it has taken my ID automatically. If in case I want to maybe do it for somebody else, I want to do it for Beth Angeline, for example, then also we can do that, right? Delivery information. These are all those questions. So it's taken the address of this particular person from the system, right? And it has automatically populated that information. You can give any additional instructions, whatever you want, test instructions, for example. So when you do that, same behavior what you have for any e-commerce website we have here as well. So that is why this is quite a powerful feature in ServiceNow, where you give them that end user experience. So what you see here, there is a request item created already. It tells you everything. When was it submitted? What is the request number? Who is the requester? I mean, for whom it is requested? What is the estimated delivery time? All of that is here. And then you can see in what stage right now it is. So this is a backend workflow which we have defined for this particular catalog. So this workflow can be defined for individual catalogs. So you might want approvals, you do not want approvals, you might want multiple tasks, do not want multiple tasks, which is fair enough. But this is where things actually happen. So right now, this request is submitted in system. And then this is the highest level of framework. Sorry, I would say this is the, okay, let me just come here. Let me show you that, right? So this is the first level of hierarchy, which you, not here, sorry. I will search it in global search, not in this search. That was a catalog level search. That, okay, what are the catalogs available? That is why it didn't work out. So I have to search this number actually here. Whatever I submitted from the main. Right. So this is the one we just created from the top, from the front side, right? From the front end, from the portal as an end user. Now, as a support team member, he will be assigned this request. Whoever will be assigned this request, he will be seeing it here, and then he will do whatever he wants to do with this particular item. Now you can see this item has created. So what do you see here? This is the at the top level. This is a request number REQ. So this is what you have to understand as a structure. REQ, which is request, is at the top level. You can it can have multiple catalog items inside it. So in that case, remember there was something like add to cart, and we just used the first one itself. That is why you have only one item, because you are requesting an item. Because if you remember, I told you that whatever item you're looking at, those tiles, they are actually those catalog items which we are interested in, right? So in that case, I have requested for this email account. So this request is more of a governing framework around this particular catalog item, because by default, out of the box, whenever you submit an item, it automatically creates a service request in the backend. In this case, maybe we have not kind of used any approvers. That is why you cannot see any approvers there, but you can decide that. And you can see the workflow of this particular request. Okay, what is the workflow they've used for this particular catalog item? You can see that here as well. So this is what they are showing, that, okay, there's no, let's get opened. In the meantime, let's go back to the main screen. So this is where, when you come to RITM, now what happens? Now, RITM is called as requested item. So the first one was REQ, which is called as request. RITM is called as requested item. It has all this information automatically filled in, open time, what is the item, because this is the item we have actually selected from front end. This is the parent request number, which got automatically attached to this requested item. As I said, whenever you request for any catalog item from front end, it will always take you to the request. It will always create a request for you. And due date is already popular because it is configured in the catalog in the back end, right? Quantity we have already ordered one. So stage fulfillment, which means it has to be kind of, and this is the variable. If you remember, I've selected a value called algo.service.com, right, in the preferred email section. So I have this particular thing here, right? So this is called as requested item, and every requested item will have a task associated to it. So this is the out of the box structure of ServiceNow. The first thing will be REQ, request. Second will be that actual item which you've ordered, which is called as requested item. And third thing is the task which people have to do to fulfill that particular request. So this is a 3-layered structure out of the box in ServiceNow. For example, now I assign it to anybody for that matter right now. There is no one right now. Okay, so request for, okay, I update the task. We are not able to find out that particular. So come back to this, and I will just close this task. That, okay, this task is done. For example, we'll just mark it close. So this item is, you can see there is one more task which got opened, because this is how they have defined. Just give me a minute. I think there is some problem with my screen share. So I think just give me 1 second. Yeah. Right. We were this RITM page, and as I was showing you that after clicking on one task, this is a task which we already had. So you can see the task already got created 5 minutes before, and the moment I finished this task, the new task got created, which is just field services, for example, right? Now, if I see what happens in this task, I close this task also, that it is done, close complete, stage is close complete, right? Let's see what happens now. One more task got created. Interesting. So let's go here. Let's close this task also. The stage will be close complete. This is one more task is created. Can you see this, right? So this is how the internal delivery happens from the IT side, right? So you might see from the front end that it is just a one catalog. It should be finished. Why it is taking so much of time? But then if there are multiple tasks to be done for a particular catalog item, they will have to do it. And this is the beauty of this whole concept, that you want to create multiple tasks for multiple teams for one single item. So for end user, it looks like one single item. On the back end, you have the entire workflow which talks about approvals, which talks about group approvals, individual approvals, which talks about multiple tasks to different teams. So in this case, the group was procurement, and in this case, group is field services. And the interesting part is the tasks are sequential in nature, because only when you procure, you will receive it. Only when you receive the item, you will actually configure the hardware, and only when you do this, you will deliver to customer, right? So you have this capability to define sequential tasks. Even you can define parallel tasks, you can define parallel approvals. So all of this is possible. It just depends on the business requirement, that what is the requirement, how do you want to configure these tasks. So this is where it gives you flexibility and scalability, I would say, to define multiple tasks for a single catalog item, which are tracked independently. And only when all the tasks are closed or marked as kind of not required, then this request status, what you see is automatically completed. Do you see this now? I have not changed the status of the request RITM as completed. The moment all the tasks were completed, I have kind of closed them. Only after that, the stage automatically got completed and state got as closed completed. So there's a difference between the word stage and state. So state, you have all these pending, open, work in progress, close, complete, close, incomplete, close. You can configure the behavior of the catalog based on whatever your requirements are. You can make it pending and you can make some mandatory fields there. But this is something which is configured for this catalog item particularly right now. So I just wanted to show you the overall structure of a request item, that how does it work. And now if I go back to this, so you can see this, this is even the request, which was the parent one, it also got closed complete. Can you see this here? Right? So this means that the moment task gets completed, the RITM gets completed and the request gets completed also. So your entire cycle is complete now. And all those notifications which you wanted to send to the end user, everything has been taken care of. Right? So all of that has been done. Now you can see this, for example, that how did the workflow work? We will not go much into detail. I'm just telling you that all of these things started, begin. There was no approval, that we skipped it. Then we had this tag called is requirement turned on? Yes. Then we waited for the item to fulfill it. Then we fulfilled that particular task. We fulfilled the second task. We fulfilled the third task, and then we fulfilled the fourth task, and then only the entire stage got finished. This is where you define the entire catalog workflow for a catalog item. So you can use a simple one where you don't need multiple tasks, you don't need approvals. It is just assigned to an individual team. They just work on it, close it. That also you can define. So it's kind of, you have to determine the categories of the catalog items which you have to create complex workflows for. There are a lot of items which do not need complex workflows. Only one team is required to be taking action on that, right? So it all depends upon the requirements. But this is where you can understand the system better. Okay, for these out of 100 catalogs I have to create, 40 of them can be quickly resolved in one single action. So I don't need to kind of define a big workflow for that item, right? This is where you can define things accordingly. So this is where you have this particular thing. Now let me show you how does this catalog. Any questions on this part in terms of the workflow which I talked about? So first was REQ, second is RITM, which is push item, third was SC task. Okay, so we are good with this part so far. Okay, so let's move forward. Now let me show you the same item which actually we have created, which we have used, new email account item, right? Let us see. This was a record which we had. This is now it has actually opened the catalog. So this is the view of catalog which we had in our this interface in the main interface. So in the main interface, if I were to go to, like, for example, if I just do a service catalog here and I want to see the catalog, then here I can see all those catalogs. The same catalog structure which we had in the portal side, we'll have it here as well. So the structure which you have here, the same structure you will have here as well. Services, hardware, can we help you, software, office, desktops, same things are here, right? So now this is one of those cases which is called as okay. Before we go into that, let me go back to that item which I was talking about. So where can you find that item? Because as I said, it was a catalog item which we selected from the front end. Now the items here are actually in this particular. So generally you work on this particular menu most of the time, which is called as maintain items. Here you actually maintain the catalog or create the catalog for the first time, which you have created. Now I'm just searching new email account. This was the item which we requested for. How it is created in the backend, this is something we have to understand now, so that we can correlate back. Okay, this is how it was visible to us, and this is how we have created this catalog in system, right? So first of all, I have defined the name of the catalog. Then I've defined catalogs as service catalog. This is the category. You can have other catalogs also. So right now, your consumer service, customer service, technical. So you can define these categories inside it. Right now, what you were seeing on the portal were all of them were service catalogs actually. So right, this is in service catalog area. You can edit in multiple areas also. This is category called top requests. So there is a menu called top requests, and under those top requests, we have it here, right? Now they've not defined owners here, which is fine. You can define, you cannot define, it's up to you completely. Right. So this is where you're defining the entire. Now see this part, right? This is interesting part. Item details. So this is where you've defined the short description as new email creation, and this is where you define the entire service overview. Now, if I go back to that particular catalog again, maybe this was the one, right? So whatever you've defined here, whatever you see here is actually defined in the backend here. This is an HTML page, right? So short description, new email creation. This is the one, new email creation. Then the entire description, service overview, it is here. All right. Now, if I go further up, then we'll come to related lists little later, because yeah, let me complete the few parts there. The process engine. So here you have three options. One is flow, second is workflow, third is execution plan. Now, out of these three, for any catalog item, you have to select only one of the options. Because if you select two, the system will not understand which one they have to run. So this is where this is a must thing. I mean, you cannot select more than one option here. I mean, either this or this or this. This flow is actually, so in latest versions of ServiceNow, in recent 3-4 versions, they have introduced a concept of flow designer. We'll cover that in the next class in detail. But just for now, understand this is more of an automated flow with. So workflow is something which where we have to write some scripts, also advanced scripts, and this is a little complex in terms of defining a workflow. The same purpose can be achieved also by using flow designers, because it is kind of no code stuff which can be configured quickly and can be configured even by system administrators. You don't need hardcore developers to configure a flow. For workflow, you might need a person with scripting knowledge for sure, because you might need to require scripts. So this is, in this case, they have actually defined a workflow rather than a flow, because it may be in old catalogs, they have used the workflow here. The picture, this is a picture which was visible in that catalog. Do you see this here? Right. Now, if I go further up, pricing. So right now I've put pricing as 0.00. You can see, yeah, because there is no price right now. That is why they have put it here. If I change the pricing of this catalog, maybe if I just want to make it 10, let me see this, right? I click on save. How will things change for us, right? So let me. Can you see this price has been reflected here? $10, right? So I can change this. This is, I'm just trying to relate all the fields which are on the catalog front end and how do you define them in the back end. This, if you understand the structure, then the service catalog thing is almost done. Omit price and cart. Yeah, you can do that. Recurring price, right? So if you want to order that multiple entries, or maybe, for example, this is a classic case where you have something like a laptop and you want to do an annual subscription for maintenance. This is where you can define the recurring price, and you can define the frequency as well: daily, weekly, monthly, annual, quarterly, whatever the frequency is, right? It all depends. So this is that use case where you have recurring prices. For not for all the catalogs, you have recurring prices by default available, right? Now, if I go to portal settings, so request method is order. That is why you see this word called order now. You can change it from order to request to submit as well. This is also which can be taken. At the moment I selected request, hide add to cart, hide quantity, because add to cart and quantity options were available when we selected order. Right, this is a difference. So if you see add to cart and quantity options, these are available when you had order option here. The moment I select from order to request, and I gotta submit it, that will be changed. So do you see this here? Request. There is no quantity option. There is no order option. This is how you change things in the runtime. So it is actually quite easy stuff, to be honest. Let me select submit, and the moment I select submit, even delivery time is hidden. So you can uncheck these options. You can still show these options if you want to. It is just that out of the box ServiceNow works in that way, that moment you select submit as an order, even these three options get hidden, right? Now I'll go back to the same, which was order. I don't want to change the out of the box behavior, to be honest. So I'll keep it as it is. I'm just trying to show you that how things change by changing configurations in the backend, because this is what you have to do as a system admin. So we are back to the same thing which we had. I'll hide add to wish list, hide attachment, mandatory attachment. This is all we can do while we do it from portals. So overall, you have to understand that what all things are there to define a catalog. First thing is name, second is catalog, third is category. Then you have owners, you have item details, where you describe for description. You have process engine where describe which workflow should it work. And generally, execution plan is people do not use so much. So I think generally we use flow or workflows. Picture we talked about. This is icon which we give for the catalog builder. This is the pricing pricing discussion on the catalog. This is how it looks like. What kind of buttons will be visible to you? What kind of UI actions will be visible to you? This is how it is, right? Now, this is once you have defined this catalog. Now you can try it from here also. You don't need to go to here to see everything, how it looks like. You can even come here, go back, and you can still try it. The same catalog which you had there will be visible here also. Right? So this is also an interesting feature, which is called as try it. Now you have something called edit in catalog. We'll come to that part a little later. In the meantime, let's talk about loading. Sorry, not loading. Let's talk about the related list, right? So when you define a catalog, there are multiple things you can make it dynamic in nature. You can have a lot of things around it. I'll tell about each and everything individually. The variables this is email, right? So this is a variable which they have captured in the catalog item. So this is a variable. If you remember when I was talking about this catalog the first time, I was telling you that this is called as a variable where you take user input and you have defined that this field is an email field. That is why it looks like this. This icon appears here because I have defined this here already. This particular question, which is preferred email address, this is the question name, and this is the type of the field I want to put in there. I can add multiple variables to it, whatever I want. And when I add the variables, I can actually add a lot of types of variables. So let me show you what kind of options do we have. Let it get opened. I'm just taking some time. Okay. So this is where you can, you sometimes the system response slow, it shows you this. This is where you can define a lot of things in the variables, right? So you have single line text, multi-line text. These are the kinds of variables you can define. You can define attachment type things, break, checkbox, container end. So there are a lot of things we don't use necessarily everything, but then generally we use a checkbox, we use attachment, we use label field, date time field, duration field, email field, IP addresses field, label field, list collector, look up multiple choices. You have a lot of options there. You select one of them, select box, drop down boxes, multi-line text, multiple choice options, reference fields. When I say reference field, it is more about that it is referring to a existing table in ServiceNow, which means it is feeding data from that table. For example, if I say requested for, now requested for will have to be a user in the system. That is why it will always be a field which we are trying to take from that particular table. So this is where it will be a reference field. Any CMDB data you want to go through, you can see that from there. So URL options also there. You can also create a variable which looks like a URL, even a yes, no sign box, right? So this is how you define a variable. And you can make it mandatory, you can make it read only, you can make it hidden, you can make it active, then deactivate it, whatever. And order is the preference in terms of how it looks like, what comes first and what comes second. This is where you define this. And you can define the question here. For example, in that case, you define the question as new email account, right? So we said preferred email address. This is where you define it. Tooltip you can define, example text you can define. So for example, if I give an example text, that will always appear in this particular screen here. And you can override that. So it will just give you that what kind of things do we expect as an input. For example, there are sometimes there are some fields which the end users are not very comfortable with in terms of understanding what is expected, right? So field name is something they have decided some name there, but then nobody is clear. So this is where these tool tips and example text actually help. And this is a very good feature which you must use for the service catalogs wherever you think that particular item or variable you're asking for, input you're asking for, is not so clear. I mean, it's not so clear from the mere word of it. So you might need to give tooltips and example text to do that. Annotations you have. Then you have type specifications, variable width. So these are all those UI kind of interfaces. Default value you could define. Okay, if for example there is some choice option and I'm selecting no by default. Now, if I have to select yes, I have to override values. In that case, you can define the default value also. This is permission, which again, those role-based access which we talked about. So we are not going into each and every detail right now. I'm just telling you these are the options available. We don't need to cover all of this in quite a detail in this particular syllabus as per the course content. We just have to understand at a higher level that, okay, what all it can do, how does it work, visible elsewhere, visible bundles, summaries, guides. So these are all those variables, kind of variables you can define on a particular catalog item. So you understand what is variable here. So the idea is to just understand variable means these questions which we are asking to the end users, right? Now this was variable. Now then you have some more things there as well. We'll talk about them as well once let the screen come up. So this is variable set. A variable set is a group of variables which can be reused across multiple catalogs. Now, for example, something like requested for, something like contact details. I had certain catalogs where I need to use the same set of variables again and again, 4 or 5 variables in every kind of catalog. So rather than creating a variable every time for a new catalog, I would prefer to create a variable set which I can reuse in my catalog. So I can, for example, if I go here, if I were to use a variable set, for example, then I can use it from here. I can, for example, standard employee questions, for example, right? If I take this, whatever are there, they will be automatically, all those questions will be automatically there for that catalog. So this is where you define template, you define some set of common variables and you can reuse them across multiple templates. So this is where the power of variable sets, and this is really powerful thing because you might, for a certain category of catalogs, which have around 20-30 catalogs, you are going to reuse those kind of, for example, requested for and location, something which generally people use. So they kind of use that variables everywhere. So these are those scripting or policies, or I would say backend things like business rules, client scripts. We have not talked about them so far. We'll talk about them later. But then once we talk about these business rules, client scripts, then generally they are at this interface level. I mean, you can define it for incident, problem, change of any table in ServiceNow for that matter. And even for a single catalog, you can define a UI policy for making variables read only, mandatory, hidden, all those things. Client scripts is you're taking some action. If I have selected a variable and based on that variable, I am selecting another variable. If the answer to the question is yes, then only I'm asking them to select a new field. Otherwise, I'm not asking them. So this is the behavior you can control from these things. And these are those backend scripts which you have to write. Available for, okay, we have to define that. Okay, if we do not define them by default, it is available for everybody. Defined here, not available for SNC external. This is called as user profiling and also user criteria. So this is something you can use and reuse across multiple things, not only catalogs, even for knowledge articles. You have the same concept of available for and not available for. So this is where you define the role control that, okay, this catalog is available only for this set of users, not everybody. So you define those criteria in the system. Then I go further into categories. This is the category under which you had this catalog called services. So if you see this here, right? So in this particular service catalog, if I come here and if I go to see it here, but generally it is this is the category under which the catalog is defined. We'll talk about that just in some time again. This is the catalog which we have assigned it to. If you remember, we have assigned it to service catalog. This is service catalog, and this category is exactly the same category which is here. Top request. It is exactly here. Services. I mean, there's some confusion here. I'll have to check this part about categories. Generally, categories are very simple. We'll talk about it. And then there are so many steps here. Right? Catalog, data lookup definitions. How do you want to look up data for a particular variable? Are there any knowledge articles related to this? Are there any related catalog items? For example, you must have seen that, okay, if somebody is buying this one, then he also needs to buy another one, kind of complementary things which they have to. These are the service fulfillment steps assigned. Generally, we don't use these 3 or 4, 5 things generally so much, but I'm just telling you these are the options available for us in terms of understanding how. So this is the overall catalog screen. This is all you define at the catalog level. Now, for everything, you can define it separately. For example, workflow, you can define separately. Flow designer, you can define separately, right? You can define all these things separately because variable sets have to be defined separately again. So the idea is that you can define all of these things, whatever you want, and it is quite a configurable things here. Now, this category thing which I was showing up here, generally, if you see this here, these are the categories which I was talking about. So under these, so now, because not everything is kind of visible on this portal because of its policies, because something is only available for certain users or for certain modules. But then few of them, which we, for example, you can see department services, it was here, right? If you see standard changes, then you have standard changes here. Services you have here, right? And you have, there was something else. Hardware was also here. So this hardware is also here. This is where you define the category under which section of the catalog we will be able to see that particular category, particular item. That is how you define the categories and subcategories of the catalog, right? And we have seen this. For example, let me show you. I think I cannot do group here at this point of time. Sorting, because it is not a reference field. That is why it is not allowing me to sort and group by. But you can see the service catalog, human resources catalog, field service catalog. So if I enable human resources module in my ServiceNow, then only I'll be able to see these kind of catalogs, not otherwise. So right now, whatever I'm seeing is this one, service catalog. So whatever is in service catalog, I am just able to see those items at this point of time. Okay. This was more about how to build the entire catalog. Now, if I tell you, any questions on that part? Please feel free to ask if you have any questions on that part which you just discussed. So I'm not going into each and everything here. As I said, you don't need to cover all of that as a part of the syllabus. But yeah, I've given you overall understanding how does a catalog work, what all things do you need to define for a catalog. Now, there is a concept called record producer. Now, for this record producer, let me go back to this particular thing, and there was a thing called can we help you. Now, if I select any of these items which I actually selected there, right? In that case, it was always getting raised as a request in the backend. If I click here and I create an incident, then even from the catalog, I can create an incident. And it will not create a REQ or an RITM or SC task, it will just create an incident. This is called as record producer, wherein you are raising a record, you're raising a new record to a different table other than request table from the catalogs. And this is where, why do we use it? So you can see the number is now incident number. It is not REQ number, because this is what I have kind of raised from here. The reason you define some kind of record producers in the service catalog is, for example, if I were to create an incident and I don't need to fill a lot of fields, because if I go to the normal incident form, there are a lot of fields I have to fill in, right? So let's go back here. Let us see this incident field again. And let me show you create new. So you can see so many fields are there which has to be filled in. So maybe the end users are not very clear about all these fields. That is why just for simplicity, just for quickness, that they should be able to resolve an incident very quickly, we give them this option of record producer. And from here, they can raise an incident. And for that, they don't need access to this interface also. They can raise this incident even from here. And this is a very good way to engage end users with. They should just need to type some basic things, and based on that, the incident will be created. This incident should have been created in system here. You can see this same incident. So you can see contact type is self-service, because I have raised it from here, from the portal. This is a self-service portal which I'm giving to my end users. That is why it becomes quite easy to give this feature to end users. They can raise incidents quickly and they can use this record producer feature quickly, right? That is how the whole idea is. So you can see most of the fields are not filled in except description and short description. Now, whoever going to work on this incident, they will assign it to themselves. They will create, they'll fill all these fields, whatever they want to fill in, but it is not up to the end user to fill all these fields. And this is where you see all those related articles which can help them, knowledge articles which can help them fix this problem. I mean, we have seen that part already. This is called as record producer, which we just saw. In terms of how is it different from a normal request flow? It is not a request. So, for example, if I were to raise a standard change from ServiceNow, then also I can do it. I just need to show the template at the front end on this user page, and they can just click on the template and fill in all the information, and it will create a standard change in system rather than creating a normal request. So this is where this power of record producer is very important, that it can transform your records to a different table if you're submitting it from portal rather than just request. It can create any task, incident, problem, change, whatever you want to create. Generally, the most common use cases in the real world are that you raise it for, you configure them for creating incidents quickly, and you configure them for creating standard changes quickly. These are very common use cases which are used across industry to use record producer. Right? Any questions on record producer? Okay. So I think we've kind of covered almost everything. There are one or two more things which I just want to cover. I think, yeah, there is a concept of order guide. Okay, and it is under the same catalog things which we talked about. So order guides. This is the order guides. Now, what is an order guide? First of all, let us understand it. So order guide is something where you need to define multiple items in a single request. And you offer that as a package to your end user, to your customer. Okay, for example, if somebody is joining the company, right, for the first time, then a company has to take 4 or 5 actions minimum to onboard that particular person. For example, creating an email, assigning him a laptop, assigning him an ID card. So always you have those 4 or 5 things which are kind of, which are required to be done. Now, in this case, they have just given 1 or 2 examples out of the box. So idea of an order guide is that it is a combination. It is offered as a package of multiple catalog items together as a bundle to the end user, so that they don't have to submit each and every item individually. They can just go here, go to the order guides, and they can just select whatever they want to select. And so you can see this here, right? So it has all of this information, the same thing which we just talked about there as well. These are they have just used a hello, I'm new here kind of stuff, right? So you have these seven variables here. You have a lot of other things as well defined here. So idea is that it has a lot of catalog items. You can see this here, right? What all catalog items they've included. They've included something called email account creation. They've included something, a laptop. They've also included a monitor. They've also included the entire MS Office suite. Now, everybody in the company who is onboarded as an employee will need access to all these 4 or 5 things. So in that case, if I ask, just understand the use case, right? If I ask him to raise individual catalog items, each of these things, right? One for this, one for this, one for this, how much inefficient way of working will that be? That is why it is always advisable to offer an entire bundle wherever you have this kind of requirement, where you need to do certain different items for a particular business process. In this case, the business process is actually onboarding or new hiring. In this case, we have to do multiple items to do that. That is why we're using an order guide. Let's see how does it look like. If I click on try it. So if you remember, we are using try it options. This is how it looks like. Can you see this? The flow of this: describe needs, choose options, check out. Now, this is all these services are here. It gives you a quick overview in terms of what are we trying to achieve, what group is this person joining. Then maybe I can just select any group for that matter right now. Business development. Will this be remote employee? No, yes, whatever. So maybe if in case of yes, they might give you more options. What office will they report to? I select any office right now for that matter. All right. Will your employee need anything non-standard? As of today, I'm selecting, maybe I select yes. Then the further questions. This is where the catalog client policies, client scripts will play an important role, that you select a particular drop down and based on that, you get further questions. If I select no here, I'll not get these questions. Right? So this is where things become interesting. Whatever. So you don't need to show everything unnecessarily to every user unless they are actually looking for something customized. Then only you should be showing them all these things. Developer, mobile device type, iPhone, for example. I go further. I have filled this particular form. Choose options. Now these are those 5 different catalog items which they have offered here. They've clubbed here together. This is developer, laptop, Mac. You have external monitor. You have a new email account. This is a mandatory thing. I mean, other things you might not want, but this is something. And all of these 5 are individual catalog items. You have clubbed them together here itself. It looks like a very good view that, okay, I have selected developer laptop, I've selected external monitor, I've selected email account. And I can again see this, right? So you can see this price. This is the classic case of one-time pricing as well as recurring pricing. So $100 annual increment is also here. So we remember we talked about this recurring price concept when we were looking at the portal settings for a catalog. This is where we define the recurring price, and it has changed the price here. Right? Now, if I want to add Adobe Acrobat or Photoshop also, these are the standard software which are required for a developer, right? I can just say text. I click on next tab. You can also see describe needs here, right? You can click on here. Go back to the save option. So this was a describe needs section. This is where choose option section we are having right now. Now, if I select maybe external monitor, right? So I have just, this is there by default. Next step, email account. Again, I can say test 123@apple.com, whatever. See, right? Next step. What color will like black? See here also you can see the charges, right? Black and white. How many gigs of storage? 16. If I select 128, right? I can select anything, whatever I want, right? Silver. I can select 64. So these are also options where you can show them different pricing or incremental pricing. For example, if I want to select 16 to 64, I will give them a message. This will increase the price from this to this. This is also we can actually do. And I can do a corp VPN account and I can click on checkout. So I selected all the options, right? Now I can delete. So again, the same options which we have in e-commerce website. Go to checkout options and you can see these are the things I have kind of seen. This also tells you this includes monthly recurring charges. It tells you it includes recurring annual charges. And this is something they've also put shipping address and everything, right? So now checkout. Checked out, request has been submitted. Now in this particular request, we see everything will be a different item altogether. So let's go back. Let's go to this request. And you can see these are the 5 items we have selected. Right? And every item is, we can see this pricing of every item. What is the stage of every item? For example, I can see that this one is waiting for approval. This is waiting for approval. This is not waiting for approval. Waiting for approval here. Yeah, it shows waiting for approval here. Waiting for approval here. Right. So we can just the same behavior which we did earlier, that we kind of create. We can update the task one by one, and the request will be closed eventually. Right now it shows pending approval. So maybe you can see something is pending here. Can you see this here? Pending approval. So I approve it. For example, somebody has to approve department head approval. You have put in, for example, for this particular catalog for new hire. Then it will go to the department head. He'll have to approve it. Now the request is approved. The request status has been changed to approved. Now you have these 5 items, right? There is a group approval also, which is also approved, because anything which is requiring more than $1,000 as a cost requires an approval, additional approval. Here also we have approved it. These are the recurring prices. One was monthly $50 and one was annually $100. If you remember, we have selected those 2 options for recurring prices in the same case. Now I can go back to the same thing and start closing these tasks, right? So you can see approval is done. That is why this particular thing is completed. This is checked in. Now it is in fulfillment. Everything is in fulfillment right now. So you can fulfill these tasks and do the same thing which you did earlier, right? So this is how You define an order guide. So to understand the difference between multiple tasks for the same item and multiple catalog items for the same order, this is a very important difference to understand. So in the previous case, which not the immediate one, the first case which we saw for new email request, in that case, we had 4 different tasks at different stages of the same catalog item. I mean, we were just looking for new email request, but that particular catalog item requires 4 teams to complete their tasks in a sequential manner. So those are the cases of 4 tasks in a single item. This is a case of multiple RITMs in a single request. You can also do the same thing by using add to cart feature, which I was showing you some time back, that if there was an add to cart thing and you can add multiple things, in that also you will be creating RITM. But in this particular case of order guide, the difference was that these options were pre-populated. These options were pre-configured, that this is a bundle, this is a package which I am offering to my customer, to my end user. He can choose to select, he can opt to deselect or whatever he wants to, he can do that. But this is something I'm offering as a bundle. So that is why it is creating a different task. Or maybe you have a situation, for example, for this RITM, you might need 4 or 5 tasks, which is fine. Then it will be the same case. For example, if I just go here, and if there'll be a task here as well, right? You have to complete now. Now you might have the same situation that, okay, let's try this out. Let's see what happens here. Right? Close task. If I close this task, I will go back to the same request item. Now it has opened one more task. So the same cycle will continue. Whatever cycle we have defined for this particular catalog item as corp VPN, the same cycle will continue. So which means you are in one single REQ or in one single order request, you are handling so many request items, catalog items, so many tasks together. So you are defining the behavior at an item level. That is why, if you remember, I told you initially that maintain items is the most important menu under service catalog, because this is where you define most of the things. So you actually define the behavior of a catalog item. Now you bundle it with something, you don't bundle it with something, that's fine. The behavior of the catalog will continue to remain same as we have defined as per the workflows, as the approvals, as per the tasks we wanted for that particular catalog. So this will continue to happen in the same way, right? Because you have defined that particular task somewhere, that for this particular corp VPN, I have defined a flow engine, and this flow engine, I am using this particular so many tasks and so many approvals. All right. For example, let me go back to this corp VPN just to give you a flavor. If I go to maintain item, and this is where you have to go most of the times, maintain item, and I search for this corp VPN. Now let's see what flow I have defined behind this catalog, because of which it is creating so many tasks. So procurement process flow software, same flow I can reuse across multiple catalogs. This is the beauty of it. So these are all reusable things. So I've defined that this maybe this is one of the item flow which I have defined. This is published, this is not published. So I have to check only this one, because if it is not published, then which means nobody is using it. So I'm using by default this one. This is the workflow which I'm using right now. And here I have defined multiple things. Here I have defined the stages. Wait a minute, let me show you here. Show workflow. This is how the workflow looks like for this particular catalog. And that is why all these things are getting done. All those catalog, all those items, all those approvals which you decide. So this particular procurement process flow of a software is generic for any software which you want to procure, which you want to install. So that is why you can reuse this flow across multiple of your items. This is where you define begin, approval action. Is procurement turned on? Yes, it is turned on. Then I have so many tasks. Fulfillment, awaiting delivery, configure item, deliver item. So all those things you remember, we have seen in the first catalog also. It is all up here. So this is where you've defined all those things, and that is why it is going in that loop of creating multiple tasks. And this is called as procurement flow process software published. You can see any workflows here. For example, if I just want to go and show you request, this is the service catalog request, item request workflow, a very standard one which they are using for multiple other items also. So from here you can see this department head approval, CIO approval, and you can reuse this flow again at a multiple level. You want to trigger a notification, you want to create a task, you want to create a log message, approval action, whatever. So you can create a lot of things here. But as I said some time back, that nowadays they don't generally use workflows; they use flow designers. So this is a legacy workflow, I would say, which is being used. You can use them. I'm not saying this is not supposed to be used, but then, yeah, the as per best practices, as per the new guidelines, if you're creating a new catalog in system and defining a new flow, then better use flow designers, which we will cover in tomorrow's class, because that is the next topic for us in terms of progressing further. So otherwise, I think we've talked about everything here. We have talked about all those things. And then there are some roles like catalog administrator, catalog manager, and something called catalog binder. So just, yeah, just I mean, it is a very small thing. Catalog. So what happens is, if all the catalogs have to be built by the system administrators, then it would be a difficult task to manage, because there are so many catalogs, so many things. So what they generally do is they delegate these rights to two people, two roles. One role is called as catalog administrator. Second role is called as catalog manager. So those are the people identified from various departments. Okay, for anything for human resources, this is the guy who will define the catalog template, who will be actually catalog administrator, and the second guy is catalog manager, who is defining that, okay, can I use this template for my catalog? So this is about using a service catalog template by generally system administrators do not use it. Do not use it. This is generally given to the catalog administrators who are responsible to define the templates, and then catalog managers can further take those templates and publish it for their use cases. This is how you have catalog. So here you have created a new catalog item template. So template, you understand, right? So template is all about creating a framework, and based on that framework, people can create a new catalog item from here. So this is generally used by catalog manager. This is generally used by catalog administrator. Yeah, this is what we have to understand. So create a catalog item template, maybe standard record producer, right? If you remember, record producer will be creating a record in some other table, not in request table. That is why maybe I want to just select standard one, and I'll define this template, for example, test template, and I'd say there are so many options here, right? You can see this details, location, questions. I am not going to full all of these things right now, but then the idea is that this is the template which can be later on reused across multiple catalogs and can be defined by catalog administrators, right? Now, let us just understand this thing. Give me a second. Yeah. So we have something called roles. Yeah. So this is what you have to understand if you want to just talk about the examination part also, that they talk about the roles, right? What is every role supposed to do? So you can see administrator is like a person like us who is system admin, who can do everything, who can also write scripts and or everything, right? Catalog administrator can also create a new catalog, can manage it, can maintain it, but cannot do scripting. Catalog manager is something who can edit and update a service catalog, as well as the categories and subcategories. They can assign editors also and a different manager for the service catalog. But this is also they can do. So you have to understand the difference between catalog administrator versus catalog manager. And he is a guy who can just edit and update a catalog. He cannot create a new catalog, right? This is what you have to understand here. So these are general roles and responsibilities which are there for service catalog areas, right? So this is that clear? They can manage service catalog application, including categories, catalogs, items, but not scripting functions which are available to administrators. In this case, they can edit and update a service catalog, as well as the categories and catalog items within the catalog. They can also assign editors and also different manager for the service catalog. This is a bigger role, I would say. However, you can perform all these roles only when you are assigned as a manager for that particular catalog, not for all the catalogs by default. So you define that, okay, this for these catalogs, this is going to be catalog manager and this will be catalog administrator. This is how these roles and responsibilities do change as far as service catalog is concerned. Okay. So if no question, then I think the service catalog thing is almost completed. I mean, there is otherwise, you know, that there are a lot of things which are there. But as a part of this course, I think whatever the course, I think we have in fact covered more than 75% what is available in the course. Otherwise, from course perspective, it is not even half an hour session. But just because I want to give you a quick high level overview understanding of how does a catalog works, how does the catalog work? That is why it was important to cover at least all the parts at a high level. Now, wherever your interest lies, wherever you have a requirement, you can dig down further into that, right? So today's session, if you have any questions, then we can continue. Otherwise, we'll add today's session for today and we'll start Flow Designer tomorrow. Any questions before we stop? Okay, stop.